ShinRobjira.
Wow, I've made some bad intros in my day. That one was terrible. Clearly on purpose, though. Welcome to Why You Should Read. This is a brand new series where I bare bones try and play salesman to try and sell you lot on a manga that I personally think is worth your time. Every episode is going to have a different theme that I'm going to try and drive home into your brains to kind of persuade you to check the series out. Every episode is going to vary in how long it is, what the theme is going to be, how it's made, yada yada yada. Today's episode, the very first episode of Why You Should Read, is clearly about Yu-Gi-Oh! But before we get into talking about all that, let's discuss some history with Yu-Gi-Oh's creator. The series was written and drawn by mangaka Kazuki Takahashi. The man began his career as a mangaka with his first series, Tokyo no Tsuma. Following that came Tennen Shoku Danji Burei, both of which didn't last too long. Takahashi didn't find any major success until he created today's subject, Yu-Gi-Oh! Which, wow, can you imagine going from 0 to a billion at the turn of a dime like that? Like, imagine being so down on your luck and then your next series manages to dethrone Pokemon in terms of popularity and sales all throughout the States. At least for a little bit. Anyway, Yu-Gi-Oh! Spiked in major popularity with the introduction of Magic and Wizards, eventually renamed Duel Monsters. Magic and Wizards is actually a reference to Magic the Gathering and its parent company, Wizards of the Coast. Shonen Jump got tons of fan letters asking about the game, so Takahashi decided to extend more details into the manga. Hence why the series became so majorly focused on the card game in future arcs and incarnations. But enough history. Yu-Gi-Oh! Before he was the king of games and before the series became a little bit more family-friendly, the series sat on a mountain of shadows and death. Yeah, seriously, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not 100% kid-friendly. This lovely collection of 7 volumes built up the foundation of the series that we were only clued into when Yu-Gi-Oh! Finally hit the US airwaves. That's right, for those who don't know, Duelist Kingdom was not the beginning of Yu-Gi-Oh!
You see, here in the States, unless you were an avid Jump reader or a manga fan overall,
you really didn't know how your favorite characters came to become such good friends. You heard that right, Arc 0 and yes, Season 0 goes into detail on how Yugi, Joey, and Tristan become friends. It even goes to show a little bit more into Yugi and Teia's relationship with some lusting thrown in there for good measure. But I imagine that alone doesn't make you want to read this, huh? So I might as well just give you more information. The series starts off with a rather basic chapter 1 that does a fine job introducing us to who will become our main cast. Yugi, Anzu, or Teiya, Janachi, or Joey, and Honda, Tristan. What really sold me on this series was within this single volume alone.
that being, we actually get to see the layers for these characters. We get some slight backstories for these characters, but overall, and most importantly, we have some meaning injected into these characters. It's not just, hey, you're my friend, this, that, or the third. Joey, for example, was much more gang-oriented when he was in middle school. He had such a long record that he was actually almost sent to jail at one point. And he comes from a broken home with a boozer for a father. Yugi and Tristan are shown to not like each other too much, and they're not even close to being friends until the end of volume 1. And we actually get to see Teiya be passionate towards the idea of becoming a dancer. She risks her high school education by getting an after-school job, which is forbidden and can lead to expulsion, just so she can save up money to go to America to study dance. These characters are built up and layered, and it's a shame only bits of that were shown before some of us even knew about the stories before the Duelist Kingdom arc. We never got to see any more of that until this manga was released in the States, but why? Well, I'll show you. Yugi curses this dude over here with the sight of greed, which makes him think anything and everything within his surroundings is money. Pretty basic, right? Well, how about this face? That's not Yami Yugi, that's a fucking scary child. While that is true, he is a very scary looking dude, that is indeed Yami Yugi. He keeps Yugi's height in the original series though, while the hairdo slightly changes like in the anime. And Yugi does get more confident, of course, but he also gets a little more morally questionable. See, we know Yami Yugi, or the spirit of the puzzle, is this very noble and fair person. But what Yugi does to some of these people in the manga, hell, even in the anime, it's rather malicious. Like, yeah, I understand these people are messing with the people you care about most in your life, but, I mean, holy shit, dude! Throughout Volume 1, we see just what the spirit is capable of. He makes this sleazy TV show director go blind with mosaic vision after he sets Yugi up to be the victim in his show on school violence. This dude over here is cursed with the sound of his heartbeat being blasted into his ears at max volume, as he is done with his voice to countless other people and students.
And this guy over here holds our angel
Taya at gunpoint. He then forces puny Yugi to serve him food, and of course puny Yugi isn't puny Yugi, and he pretty much gets this dude burnt to a cinder. It's the perfect Saturday morning cartoon material for children. Just as a side note here, if you're looking to track down season 0 of the anime, as per usual, there was a lot of things that were changed when condensing the manga into an anime, but the deaths were changed as well. This guy who burnt to a cinder in Burger World didn't actually burn in the anime, the flames and the pain were all in his head, and that kind of worried me whilst I was making this video because I thought that would essentially make my entire point behind this episode moot. But as it turns out, a lot of these darker things were changed for the anime because they really wanted to market Yu-Gi-Oh for a much younger crowd. Which, hey, I completely think is understandable. You can't have your main character killing people even if they totally deserve it. Plus, other stories in the manga definitely wouldn't have worked in the anime if they were going to be doing that, hence why they cut so many of these first stories out. But yeah, just wanted to pop in and say that. Continuing on. Across these 7 volumes, there are 59 chapters and 3 major arcs. The Shidi arc, the Kaiba Land arc, and the Bakura arc. These 3 arcs have a lot to do with what made Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! It introduced the bigger Egyptian connection to the series, it showed off the beginnings and reasonings behind Yugi and Kaiba's rivalry, and it made Bakura make fucking sense. But you can read those for yourselves, since the main point behind the series is to get you to try these series out for yourselves, and I don't want to spoil, all the good stuff. So today I'm going to talk to you about 2 throwaway stories from these original 7 volumes that I personally feel perfectly encapsulate what I'm trying to show off with this episode. That being, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was pretty dark. Yeah, sure, it has its goofy moments, but where it was meant to shock and where it was meant to make you feel weird, it definitely succeeded. Volume 1 has a lot of great stories that are both eye-opening and terrifying to some extent. Yes, this cheesy show about friendships, believing in yourself, playing a card game at a weird fucking island, all started here with all this glum, all this dark, and all this sad. Okay, maybe not too much sad, but believe me, what I've shown so far ain't nothing. Murder is actually quite the staple in this series, and it's really not too subtle. For example, the first story I'm going to be talking about is a 2-parter. In fact, both of the stories I'm going to be talking about today are 2-parters. This story takes place in volume 6 and between chapters 43 and 44. Let's get started. Remember for a minute, if you will, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Yeah. Remember them? Well, Yu-Gi-Oh! Brought them back as monsters for a brand new high school craze called Monster Fighter. Yeah, just look at this fighter portable Mons. This funky looking fella over here that looks like he is the poster child for "It's not a phase, Mom" is a known asshole who steals monster fighters from his victims. So naturally, he challenges Yugi, he plays dirty, and he beats his ass. Yugi hikes back to his friends, battered and beaten, and asks Joey for his monster fighter. Yugi shows up as other Yugi and challenges Nagumo again, only this time, it's a shadow game. And the players take on their monster's damage. Gugu over here gets a cracked face while Yugi gets some dents in his chest. Nagumo over here tries to play dirty, but on some Toy Story type shit. The monsters he's stolen from other kids come to life and hold him in place while Yugi charges his Thunder Smash and blows this dude's guts out, leaving his shell of a corpse to be found by a teacher or student, never to be spoken of again. Seriously, the only people we ever see again after this version of Puzzle Spirit is done with them are the Kaiba brothers and Bakura, but you knew that already. Now, the series ain't all dark and wind chimes in the winter. There's a lot of truly heartwarming parts that break the stories up. One of my all-time favorite moments is when Yugi admits to Joey and Taya, after Tristan dies, that he's afraid of this other version of himself that lays within the puzzle. It's kind of heartbreaking because Yugi is afraid of the spirit, and he's afraid of telling everybody because he thinks they'll think he's a freak and not want to be his friend. After all this, Joey comforts Yugi, and he pretty much speaks for everybody when he says, "We're never not going to be your friend." Seriously, it really choked me up. But you're not here for that. Another example, you ask? Well, I'd love to. The Evil Dragon cards is quite possibly one of the darkest throwaway stories from Arc 0. While it does dance into what would become Yu-Gi-Oh! Norm, it still does manage to suck a lot of hope from your soul, amongst other things. The chapter opens up with the gang at the game shop with a new character, Imori, being introduced. The rather transparent Imori deposits exposition about his grandfather being a game collector as he places this mysterious jar
jar down. Gramsci Muto gets a bit of a mushroom flashback as Joey reaches for the jar to break the seal. Grandpa Muto drops the jar's backstory and its name, the dragon cards, and how they were used by a Taoist master as a final test for feng shui students in China. He warns Immori that the seal must never be broken, for it contains the power of the shadows. And then we get this, the clear sign of, oh shit dog, this kid gonna be a villain. The next day during swim class, Yugi finds his puzzle to be gone, with a ransom note in its place, which, big surprise, Immori stole it. And thus Immori challenges Yugi to a game of dragon cards. The battle is rather brutal, and the designs of the dragons are very, very cool, but Yugi, being normal Yugi, loses the game against Immori and his soul, which is then sucked into a jar, waiting to be devoured by a bunch of hungry dragons that lurk within it. The chapter ends when it's shown that Yugi made a lunge for the puzzle, and with bare contact, the spirit within the puzzle takes over his body. The same thing essentially happens in chapter 47, only Yugi beats Immori. He gets his original soul back, because apparently this jar can only hold one, and Immori is left to have his soul devoured by dragons as Yugi walks away with the jar to be locked away for eternity. Yeah, that ending always really bothered me. It's like, yeah, the little creep got what he deserved, but jeez. I'd say in tone, Volume 1 absolutely had more of an off-the-hinge kind of feeling, while still being somewhat tame. But as the series goes on and the characters get a little bit more recognizable and a little less dark, the situations got a lot darker. While I'd love to spoil the heck out of the Shadi arc for you all, I'm keeping spoilers of the major arcs absent here, because they're truly some of my favorite stories in the series and manga overall, and a few things ain't too bad, right? Shadi summons this creature demon named Amit from this portly Portobella's psyche that basically bites his fucking head off. Kaiba hires a proto-Leatherface looking dude to slaughter Yugi and his friends in his haunted house attraction.
And he got TV titties!
The spirit within Bakura is so much more sadistic and forcibly attaches himself to Bakura by stabbing him with the Millennium Ring spike so he can't take it off. Death, mental entrapment, getting trapped in the bodies of board game figures. This series got so weird. But here is where I'll call it a day and a wrap on episode 1 of Why You Should Read. The series started out in some really weird places with lots of different injected into it, especially if you're coming to the manga from the Duelist Kingdom arc. But as you could probably tell from watching this video, when I was showing off stuff from volume 1 to then showing off stuff from volume 6, you can see that a lot of the characters started to become more defined and a lot more recognizable, to the point where the characters started looking like their anime counterparts. And it was interesting to see that kind of rough and not sure design just slowly transform into a more confident design. Me personally though, I love volume 1's design of Yami Yugi. Just the crazed look in his face, that weird smile. It was just so cool seeing that character so deliriously different from what I was used to seeing. And reading this series for the first time just blew my 12 or 11-year-old mind, because wow, I wasn't expecting Yugi boy to really have too much of a dark past. But then again, when you look at certain series that are really big nowadays, their manga counterparts, which obviously came before their anime counterparts, they were a little bit darker, a little bit more mean-spirited in a sense. I hope this video helped shed some light on the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! For those who didn't know it. And for those who did know it and you're watching this video, I hope you had a fun time kind of re-experiencing some stories and going through the notions that blew your mind at some point in your life. And I hope you had a fun time watching it. I apologize for taking so long to make this video. As stated at the beginning of the video, I really don't have too much confidence in myself when trying out new things like this. Sometimes I feel like it's too convoluted. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't look right. Sometimes I feel like my writing is trash. This is like the 7th draft of this video's script. This shizzle was supposed to come out way earlier in the summer. But thankfully, I think I held it down. But what do you think? Why don't you leave a comment in the comment section below, maybe leave a like, and if you definitely think I can improve on this and not suck at this, tell me where I can improve, please, because I'm looking to make this series somewhat of a mainstay series on this channel. But as of right now, I am currently in the middle of writing episode 2 of Why You Should Read. It's going to be a lot shorter, that much I promise you, because the point that I'm going to try and throw out there for the viewers, it's pretty easy. I don't really need too much examples. Now, how about a hint for episode 2? Yet again, it's shorter, but the series is is extremely short because it's only based on a singular volume. The author's name starts with an A and ends with an A. The story has monsters as its main characters, and that's all you get. The first person to guess correctly both the series title and the author's name gets a shout out at the beginning of the next video. I have been ShinRobjira. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I did put a lot of work into this, even if it does come off rather bare bonesy. Yet again, let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below so I know what to change or keep the same for the next one. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.